Oh my God, 62. Hi, I'm Madam Askew, and some of you may be surprised to learn that I'm actually not English. It's wonderful to be here with you. I've been cosplaying for like a quarter of a century, and I got into it because I just loved dress up, and then I discovered that other people did too, and I was like, cool. I can bring this out of the closet along with some other things and go events and dress up and play pretend with adults, and it's great.
Hey y'all, I'm Beth Goldner. I am used to introducing myself on panels as an author, but this is not a writer's panel. I love sewing, making costumes, wearing costumes. I've been a member of the 501st Legion for 12 years. For those of you not familiar with it, it is a worldwide Star Wars costuming organization that has allowed me to march and parade to Disney World in my own costumes that I made and to dance on stage with Weird Al Yankovic.
Yay! Oh my gosh, Beth, it's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to finally meet you.
Excellent. So this panel is all about planning your cosplay. And of course, with any of these panels, a lot of the content is going to be driven by what kinds of questions you have and what sort of things you need to talk about so that you can be successful in your cosplaying. Or you can be like, Hussy, I am successful. I just wanted to see if you had any additional tips and tricks. So please ask questions as we're going along so that we can direct the conversation at what you're interested in. So, but first and foremost, do you guys have a plan when you go into your cosplay? And how do you organize your plan?
So I'm a budgeter. I budget my life to death because maybe I'd like to retire one day. So I budget everything. That means I'm then going to have to plan my materials in advance and determine disaster recovery plans for when I'm undoubtedly mess up on those materials. And then I also, anytime I'm using a new technique, I need time to experiment with it. So I work in time for experimentation. I work in time for deployment and implementation. Does it maybe sound like I'm in IT? Because I am. And I also work in time for, testing, right? I wear it out and about, go grocery shopping. So I am absolutely planning most of my costumes, typically 2 to 3 months in advance. I have made a costume in 4 days before, but it was like, oh, it's a circle skirt, a simple top, and another capelet that's a circle skirt. So I'm not too worried about that. But anything that has a lot of detail or just anything that works with more than one type of material or one type of skill, I'm planning 2 to 3 months in advance.
Thank you. Beth, what about you?
I am a list maker. I make detailed lists for everything in my life, including costuming. And I tend to start from the inside out, beginning with what undergarments do I have to have for a particular costume. And that can be something as simple as just having like a cool shirt if it's a really warm costume, or if it's historic, it might be a corset and Victorian style undergarments. So I think starting with the right base layer makes a big difference in having the right costume and the right final look.
Thank you. When I'm doing my costumes, I usually start out with swatching and sketching. So I want to get my kind of what I call my roadmap for the costume. So I work on my visual concept, and I start with making a bunch of lists. I break it down by like layers because I do almost exclusively historically inspired costumes. So I'm like, okay, what do I have to start building in order to build the next thing? What am I missing to get the silhouette? And so I break down the silhouette, the layers, and then I move from there. And then there's a lot of vibes and tea in between. So, yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Do either of you have any like tools you like to use specifically for managing your lists and your plans?
So I used to, and I had to switch recently. I used to use Cos Planner, and then it shut down. And then I used another planner, and they shut down. So now what I typically do is I actually create kind of a board on Google. I usually do some kind of a drive where I've got images. Then I have an Excel spreadsheet of all the items I need to complete. And then I also have a little breakdown of like a Word document saying, okay, this is what skill I did. This is how I did it. Because sometimes you'll forget how you do things and you don't want to research it again. And so I'll put little clips of videos to this is where it's located on your computer, or this is what tutorial you wrote and this is where it's located, so that I remember how to do the things I've done. Because once you've made as many costumes, like once you get over 50, you're like, what did I do? How did I work with leather? I know how to work with leather. And so stuff like that will happen. So absolutely, I would say Google is my best friend.
I'm going to reiterate what you said about remembering how you did a technique, because sometimes when you go back to do it again, you're like, oh no, I totally forgot how I did this the first time and pulled it off. So it is good to have some documentation. I rely just on a notebook to like kind of plan things out, but I also have a lot of Pinterest boards, especially if I'm going for a screen accurate costume from a movie or a TV show. I will have tons and tons of photos, especially detail photos that show all those finer points of a character's costume.
Awesome. These days, well, and I say these days, but for quite a while now, I'm a very avid photographer of my process, and I also video a lot of the steps, partly because I teach, and I want to be able to share those things with anybody I'm teaching, because I'm not a hoarder of knowledge. I've met a few people out there who are like, I don't want to tell you the secret, and I'm like, why?
That's what I have with special effects, and I just figured it out myself.
Right.
And then I share it.
Yeah, right. I want to be able to share. So I document heavily so I can share. And then I break all of my costumes down from the past. I break them into like a sort of file system. So I collect everything about that costume so I can remind myself what I did, because you're both right. It's really easy to be like, how did I do that thing? Because I need to do it again. And our remaining panelist is here. Hello, Sarah Jean. Take your time, and we'll bring you into the conversation. Excellent. Thank you. So I also am a big fan of Google. Yeah. Hello, my friends.
Hello. So all of you have mentioned kind of a very similar process for how you catalog your planning, your notebooks, but still very similar, right?
The analog's great.
I do all of my stuff to get sketched. So, but have any of you ever used Obsidian Markdown?
Not.
I've heard of Obsidian Markdown.
So if you want IT,
Yes.
it is, if you install the Canvas application or the Canvas plugin to it, it will
It's kind of like a mega Kanban board on like steroids.
Yeah. It does file organization and everything for you.
Mhm.
So, like, I've got this video like on YouTube, this technique I want to use. You can just literally drag and drop it onto the canvas and it links it.
And that's what the cosplay planner used to do that I had that was hosted, and it was so amazing.
And it is, so it's like having a local version of Cosplay Planner that can't fail. If you've never used it,
Why did I not think of using it for
I
cosplay?
recommend checking it out.
Why? I'm terrible.
And this is why we have panels like this.
Thank
because
you.
That's great information.
Yeah, Obsidian Markdown. That is, thank you. I'm now going to go home and do that.
Awesome.
And finally recover
And I
from
would
losing.
love to learn about it. See, I'm going to wind up learning a ton on this panel too.
I use it for D&D campaign planning,
Oh, no, that would be great too.
but costuming and stuff.
I'm a DM too. I'm failing epically right now.
Not failing.
You're doing great.
I'm feeling good learning.
Before we go on, can I have someone close the door to the outside? It is very chilly.
I'm going to go grab my coat.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say it's really cold.
See this hair? Okay, that's another thing on cosplay. The more hair, the warmer you are, and sometimes it's wonderful. Because I am. I'll just show you guys. I have no hair, so my head is tiny. This goes right back on. But yeah, it's one of those things, you know.
I love it because you're like wearing a red head cape on your head.
I have a cowl full of hair.
So, Sarah, hello, my friend. Welcome. So we're gonna bring in our friend Sarah into the conversation. Sarah, could you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about sort of your brief origin as a cosplayer?
So my name is Sarah. If you see my stuff online, my profile is under Sarah Blake Creations. My origin as a cosplayer, I've always kind of liked off the wall clothes, and then was involved in a swing dancing event that was pirate themed, and there was a costume contest, and that kind of started me down that road of, hey, cosplay and costumes are kind of fun. And I knew some other folks in the dance world that were cosplayers, and they kind of roped me into it, and then have gotten more and more involved in it. And eventually I met Madam Askew, who has really roped me into stuff.
I'm a terrible enabler.
And here we are.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So we're all sharing a little bit about our planning method, and some of the tools we use for planning. And I think one of the interesting things about this conversation so far is that we are all planners. Like, we aren't really, in the writing world, you've got plotters and pantsers. And I know there are pantsers in the cosplay world, but, and we did not talk beforehand and go, are you a planner? Are you a pantser? It just turns out we're all kind of, well,
Planners.
I'm a type A person, so that is like, surprises no one. Yeah.
I'm just learning that about myself. I've been told that more recently, like, oh, that explains so much.
Sam, yes.
Yeah.
So as we're getting into this, Sarah, we're all like planners. Do you consider yourself to be a planner?
Planner and mostly researcher, I think, because I will research techniques and materials and references and all the things like crazy before I even buy a single thing or anything like that. And one of my friends had nicknamed me the fabric wizard because I was so good at finding weird fabrics because of the sheer amount of research that I do for my projects. Like, oh, I remember where to find that. Here you go.
That's awesome. Thank you. So I'll hold this. I promise. Thank you for holding it for me.
Make sure
Yeah. Yeah, no, you were so kind. Normally I do that for other people, so thank you. So one of the questions I have for you guys is, when has your planning saved you? Like, you are on the cusp of disaster. Like, when has the plan saved you?
Well, do we want to go recent or past?
Oh, pick a fun.
Okay, all right, well, we'll do a fun dramatic one. So I made a silicone mask for Creo's cosplay for Mass Effect 2 because I love video games. And I'd never cast in silicone. I learned that you can't do a soft mold. It just melts. So I had to learn to use plaster and Urafil to build up a hard shell mold so I could rotocast silicone, pour it in and rotate the mold so that it would fill all the little tiny scale details from this character. Because the first time I tried it, I'm like, where are the details? But the good thing, the reason I say that this, the planning succeeded, I bought double the amount of platinum cure silicone because I'd never used it before. And I knew, even with my testing, I tested it, it went fine, but I knew the mold was going to be far more complicated than my test molds. And so I bought double the amount and it saved my butt because they ran out. That's a great story. Also, I love Thane. He's a great character.
I'm remaking him.
Oh my god.
All the new skins.
Ooh.
I mean, I can start. This was probably when I was working on my Captain Marvel gown, and I had planned out this color gradient for the skirts and the train, and one of the fabrics that I got did not match the swatch that I had bought. And like, it was enough that it was noticeable, and it was not the right color. And I was extremely frustrated. And I get a lot of fabric swatches before any project, and I have an entire binder full of fabric swatches that I have collected from different projects, and that way if I'm looking for something, I can go to my swatch book and say, right, do I have anything? Do I like this? No? Okay, to the fabric store. Yes? Oh, cool. Let's order that. So I went to my book of fabric swatches and found some that was a close color to what I needed, and it was nylon. And so I was able to order it and then dye it just a slightly deeper shade of yellow. And then that worked for what I needed it for. But had I not had that swatch book and done all the research on fabric dyeing and known, oh, hey, polyester, don't even want to try to dye it. Nylon, I can do that. Because I had done a ton of research on dyeing fabric for a previous project. It's like, okay, I know how to fix this. Thank goodness.
So this isn't so much disaster as it is frustration. Always plan more time than you think you need for a costume. Because sometimes you have to break up with that costume for a little while and let things cool off between the two of you. One of my favorite costumes that I have is Kylo Ren. And I'm convinced that the character of Kylo Ren, he did not go to the dark side until he put on that outfit for the first time, and that's what sent him over the edge. Yeah. But making those sleeves, it was pleated upholstery material, piping, and a zipper, and I was trying to stitch it all together, and I broke needle after needle after needle, and finally I was like, you and I have to take a break from each other. We were apart for about 2 weeks, and then we got back together. I finished the project, and everything was fine. So always plan for more time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh man, I am queen of not planning enough time. Actually. Oh no. It's like I drive my performing partner a little bit crazy because I remember where I was at 10 years ago. And spoiler, I'm 10 years older. And I just don't quite have the same energy I used to. And it's been really hard to adjust for that in my calculations. And so I will often be like, well, yeah, when I was, doing that costume like 10 years ago, I did a corset in a day. And Glenn is like, yeah, you did. You weren't even 40 yet. And I'm like, stop attacking me, man. So one of the things I have found with planning is that going into sort of, I have to find a balance of not going into too much obsessive detail that it's punishing, but kind of going into exhaustive detail has helped me slow down my process and it helps me look at that schedule and go, you know what, that really is a lot of details. I believe that I need to do 3 football fields worth of cleats. So maybe I should add more time. Yeah. I see a question in the back. 2 questions, but in the very back row.
How did you manage it personally when you, for one, can't decide what it is you actually want to do in a pattern or a design or anything like that? You go, I want this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing, and none of them work together. Is there anything in the planning process that helps you coordinate your ideas to something coherent that you can work on?
Would you guys like to start?
I started with
Yeah, for like trying to put the different pieces together. For one thing, I always turn to the internet first to see if somebody else has already figured it out and can help me do that. The other thing I would say is if you're able to kind of cobble something together that maybe isn't quite the right fit, just always make sure it's a little bit bigger than you need it to be, so you can kind of take in here and there, or adjust a seam here or there to kind of fake it until you make it, essentially.
Yeah. So I also like to try to create mock-ups and see how it looks together. I'll use a lot of muslin, or I just go to a thrift store, find pieces that have similar shapes, tear them apart, put them together and go, does that look? No. So wait, if I take this one, eureka. So sometimes just getting some really inexpensive existing clothing will also help figure out, because I have horrible luck with patterns. I'm just apparently wrong length in all areas. And so I make my own patterns. And I usually go to thrift stores in the men's section and I find stuff that fits the length of me. And then I go to the women's section that has the curve that I'm looking for. And that's what's taught me how to draft patterns for my body. And I just create this little mock-up, this chimera of clothes. And then I take it apart, I draft it as a pattern in muslin, and I put it back together to see that it works.
Oh, man, I love that. I've never, ever considered doing something like that, taking apart clothes and like putting together the shapes I want as like, I don't want to mock up. I just want to confirm that I even like this. That's so cool. I sketch. So I can really visualize things in my head. I have that kind of awesome ability to manipulate shapes three-dimensionally. And so I can kind of keep track of things somewhat in my head, but also I'm menopausal. So I say somewhat with a lot of underlines. And so the other thing I found was while I'm dealing with that kind of fun time, I also cannot communicate what's in my brain to other people. And so learning to sketch and to take those shapes, like if I'm going to Frankenstein sleeves from this pattern onto this bodice front, but I'm also going to take the bodice back from this pattern, but also I want it to look like Barbie is gone on a fighting match with the Jane Austen Fight Club, then I really need to and that might be a costume I'm working on. I can neither confirm nor deny. But then I need to sketch it out to make sure that all of those things play nicely together. And so being able to look at it, even two-dimensionally, really helps me confirm that I even like those things together. Yeah. What a great question, by the way. Thank you. Well, and it's like the other thing is if I've got like fabric and a sort of loose concept, like that's what cosplay friends are for, because then you can like bounce things off with your friends who also costume, I think, and get like some cool feedback. Madam, yeah.
Yeah, so mine was also somewhat related, is that in talking about inspiration. And a lot of times you guys will play a specific character, but a lot of times you will make up a character, out of whole thing. What do you look for that really gives you the inspiration to spend all the time that I want to create this character? Whether it's your favorite character from a show or if it's just from your imagination.
I can start if there's something I feel comfortable in, because I struggle really bad with like body issues, like in image issues. So I want to wear something that I first and foremost feel comfortable in, and something that's either going to make me feel very masculine or very feminine, depending on the day. Because I ride that androgyny line real hard, and if I can't find that, then I don't want to make it. If it's going to be something completely new, it has to be something that makes me feel good inside.
Love that.
For me, since I actually do a lot of my own designs, some of them will be inspired by particular characters like Captain Marvel, Smog, things like that. Or they come from a joke, or they come from, hey, there's this pirate-themed swing dancing thing that we're trying to bring back virtually, and I'm working on a dragon cosplay, trying to figure out what would I do for this. Oh, hey, dragon pirate? Why not? So I kind of look at what would make me happy. Would I feel confident wearing something like this? Because for me, cosplay is an escape.
Yeah.
And it is something where I can control how I look. I can control how I present. And I want something that I will feel comfortable and confident in. And I also love all the fiddly details. The fussier the project is, the happier I am. The outfit that I'm probably going to wear tomorrow, I spent 4 months working on the embroidery on the sleeves alone.
It's really epic, by the way.
I love that jacket. And the jacket itself will eventually have embroidery on it. I just am adding it bit by bit because it takes so long. But I like looking at all the little details, like what kind of details can I incorporate into this? What story can I incorporate into this? And I love telling stories with my costumes. So it's like, okay, how can I tell a story with this? Or what joke can I tell with this in the instance of one of mine?
Good old icebreakers.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
I think for me, sometimes it's a character that I just want to embody because I feel some kind of a kinship with them. Like Eowyn from The Lord of the Rings. I did her because I feel a connection to that character, and I wanted to know what it felt like to be her, albeit at a con and not off fighting in a battle. And sometimes there are so many people who take cosplay so seriously, and that's fine, but I think it should also be fun. I mean, we do this because it brings us joy. And so a lot of times I'll just have a silly idea and be like, why not? Let's do it. I mean, I had blue hair for a while, so I decided to do Hades and Hercules.
That's awesome.
You know, I think sometimes it's those kind of sillier ideas that can wind up being the most fun because you don't feel pressure to be perfect. You're not trying to be screen accurate. You're not trying to wow the world. You're just out there to have a good time. And I think that's important.
That's why the word play is in it. It's costume play, cosplay.
Yeah,
That's,
absolutely.
Capital P on that play, right? So I play my original character, Madame Askew, all the time. And so that shapes what I'm doing a lot. But she's a time traveler, so I'm always looking at history for her, like historical fashion. But I don't have to be married to historical accuracy because also she's a time traveling professional cheeky strumpet, so I can do whatever I want, which is very freeing. But the other thing for me is that I'm disabled, large, older, gay woman out in the world going to cons. And a few years ago, my whole intent with my costumes really shifted because I got seriously bullied for being a fat person in costume. And so I was like, oh, you guys thought I was like soft and nice. Oh, no, that's my character. I'm spiteful. So I was like, that was a shift for me where I started making my costumes more pointed. And so there's always a statement. Before that, it was like I wanted the art and I wanted to be pretty and I wanted to have fun. And that is a point where I was like, well, I want to be pretty and I want to make the art and I want to have fun, but also I want to make sure people see me. So I wear really bright colors. I make really big, elaborate costumes because I'm like, you thought I was fat? Wait until you see my bustle. I take up 10 times more space. Come for me. And I also have something I call the slut quotient. So if it doesn't make people slightly concerned, I do not feel successful. And I want to flag as gay. So I always go for campy. So those are things I'm like constantly looking for. But even in my day-to-day dress, like I dress with intent, like all the time. So it sort of translates very well from like, I'm a very mindful, not particularly demure person in my daily dress. And I just transfer that into my costuming. Yeah. Great question. That was so fun to answer too. Thank you. So any other questions? Yes.
I think the majority of my costumes have all come down to either the idea of or a single like piece or a single item. Like the costume I most recently made, I made it entirely because I found a set of ears. So I had to make a costume.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Accessories. Yeah.
Anyway, so this is about planning, transportation, and transporting bigger items and making things modular.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Listen, I know we all have conversation to bring on this. Beth, you cosplay with the 501st.
Yeah.
Those costumes are always very particular. Would you like to start us out on that conversation?
Do you know how weird it is to get on public transport carrying a lightsaber? People look at you like you're weird. Yeah, I mean, my bulkiest costume to transport around was a stormtrooper because you have all those plastic pieces and a gigantic bin you have to put it in. These days, I stick mostly to fabric pieces that I can jam down into a suitcase. But yes, when you're planning, if you're going to be traveling to cons, you have to consider how you're getting it there. Mm-hmm. And another thing is also how your costume is going to fare while being transported. And here's my little nugget of advice. If you have a costume that gets wrinkly, hit it with an iron before you go out on the con floor. There are so many little things like that I think people overlook or don't think about. And that's a big one to transporting is you want to make sure that when you arrive, you do what you need to do to look your best before you go out. You put a lot of work into it, so make the most of it.
Yeah.
Steamers work really great for that too. Yeah. And sometimes they're easier depending on what your fabric is. Me kind of tagging along on that, I tend to have some fairly large costume.
Smog.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Oh, that's you. Yes. Yes, that is me. That was amazing. So I cosplay as Smog the Dragon from The Hobbit, and this gown is ginormous. I can lay underneath of it with my arms up above my head, and you don't see me. It is like 8 to 10 feet from front to back, and like 5 to 7 side to side. This thing is giant. I usually need a handler for that. I have recently discovered that I can transport it by stuffing it into a Christmas tree bag. This
Nice.
makes it much easier. When I don't do that, I have to stuff it into multiple laundry baskets for the skirts, carry the hoop skirt in, and then attempt to carry the petticoats of doom. That is what they're called. And you might see a pair of legs sticking out from underneath them. And the rest of it is just everywhere as I'm trying to carry it. That one I did not plan transportation of it very well, but also it needed to be large and grand. So it is what it is. And that one I actually don't mind if it gets wrinkled, because I purposefully did not iron the skirts because I wanted the fabric to have wrinkles in it, because so it has a layer of iridescent fabric on there, and it reflects the light differently if it's wrinkled, and it looks more like flames as I'm moving than it would if it was perfectly ironed flat. And then I have my Captain Marvel one, which that one I don't want wrinkles in. So I usually have to transport it squished into something. And so I bring a steamer with me, and hope it works. And then, because I've got the cons, and it's like, oh, the steamer isn't working. Okay, well, I guess we're hanging it up in the bathroom, and it's the fourth roommate, and
Can confirm.
Candy was there, so was Jocelyn. And hopefully the steam from people's warm showers will relax the fabric. That one's a little easier to transport. Oftentimes, if I'm bringing other costumes as well, I try to bring small ones that squish down easily.
Because that one is like the size of a human body
Yeah.
on its own.
Yeah.
So I love Tetris. I traveled to DragonCon recently, included 5 costumes, makeup, and shoes in one of those tiny carry-on bags. And I did it without getting anything wrinkled.
Wow.
Because I was in Girl Scouts and they taught us how to roll that clothing. And so also the little Groot over there is my mom, and she taught me how to roll clothing. I can compress clothing so small, I don't even realize. I look at it, I'm like, I did that? And also vacuum seal garment bags are your best friend. Now, if you can't do that, if it's something that's armor-wise, what I like to do is I wear drag boobs because, yeah. Anyways, so I will take my armor and stick all the bras, all the shoes, all the squishy bits under the armor so that it cannot be deformed in my suitcase. And everything, the armor goes in layers, like little Tetris, like little scales. And then I put all the soft stuff underneath it and it's rolled. And I've had a couple times where I've had a note or something from TSA going, sorry, we moved your boobs. And when I went to Canada, apparently my steamer still had a little moisture in it, so it flagged. And they opened, and I had packed this perfectly. They opened it, and the boobs flew out. And the lady was so flustered she couldn't be bothered to look at the rest of the suitcase and pushed it at me. He was like, "We're fine." So hey, sometimes you can lay a trap. Oh my God, that's so great. It was amazing because they were painted on nipples and everything. I was like, oh God, no. And then this whole thing,
Okay, this is the best packing story though.
yeah, my boobs cause problems.
So do mine, but in a totally different way. So,
I'm like, I remember her face.
that's so good.
You guys custom made it.
I do not get paid for this.
flying brooms were not in the contract. They were tucked in between like the area for my sign because I was giving a presentation in Canada, and so I was like, "Oh, this will protect the frame so that it doesn't get." But it was tucked in real tight, and so when she opened, it just went.
Okay, man, I feel so good right now. Thank you so much. Such a good laugh. Laughing with you though, because we've all had our moments with packing, and so I have really big costumes, and I do have a system, and it absolutely includes compression bags very heavily. But I want to both Sarah and Beth have mentioned this, pressing is so important. I cannot.
There are travel steamers that are like tiny
Yeah,
in a little
they're
bag,
amazing.
and you just fold in and fold out.
Yeah.
You have to refill the
what?
water more, but oh my gosh,
They're
they're
little
amazing.
travel steamers. They're
Yeah.
fabulous.
How did I not know these existed? And it's just this little thing you unscrew, put the water, screw it back in, and it's magic.
Okay,
Brilliant.
I know what I'm looking for before I travel.
Yeah, because pressing, you have to pack things pretty tightly to get into modern luggage. We don't have servants and staff and a manor house and porters and people to carry our massive trunks. I do a lot of 19th century fashion, and they expected somebody else to carry your luggage. And I'm like, this hussy does not get that.
Weight can be a problem too.
Oh, weight is a huge problem.
Yeah.
So I kind of have I used to have a tool to help me try and weigh my bags before I got to the airport, but it wasn't actually very active. So now I'm just kind of vibes and prepared to split things across the bags. But I do pay attention to how much heavy stuff I'm putting in each
Bring
bag.
a spare duffel bag. If you don't have a carry-on, just have a duffel bag tucked in the top so that if it is too heavy, take the duffel out and you're good.
Oh no, there is this duffel bag I swear by for packing.
Yep.
And Andy's nodding because she knows. So it's this garment bag that rolls up into a duffel, and I can put an
And those are
entire
amazing, yeah.
bustle dress in this
Yep.
from the skin out.
And
I can
it
get
gets pretty thin too.
Yeah. So I can get my corset, my hat, my petticoat, my bustle cage, the dress, accessories, makeup, everything for a whole costume, so that I'm good to go.
Those are common in tuxedos. So
Yeah.
I did menswear, and you find tons of those for tuxedos.
Yeah, they're really good. Yes.
You're talking about weight.
Yes.
For costumes. This is another kind of audio pro tip from Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Post offices will let you go in and weigh packages
Yeah.
for no cost.
Really?
USPS,
And they
yeah.
are- Yep. UPS and USPS both will let you go in and use postal scales to weigh luggage.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
you just walk up and say, I just need to weigh this. And they usually have the one on the side.
And they're
Ooh.
actually calibrated scales, so they
Mhm.
should match TSA scales.
Ooh.
They're usually more accurate than TSA.
Oh, that's very nice. That does presuppose that I'm packing more in advance than the night before, which is optimistic. But maybe I'll be inspired. So thank you, Zach. Yeah, for the future.
For those listening, if you need to weigh your bag, USPS or UPS, go get a free check.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, my big thing is compression bags and the rolling duffel garment bag. Really helpful. But I wear a lot of hats, and I make my own hats. They are buckram frames that are wired, and I do not want them destroyed in my luggage.
In the boxes from the stuffed animal place. Why am I forgetting its name?
Build-A-Bear.
Build-A-Bear.
I have never seen a Build-A-Bear box, but now I must see one. No, I do a similar thing with my hats that you do with your armor.
Okay.
I take all of my stockings and unmentionables
Stuff it in.
and I roll them into these really tight sort of sausage shapes, and then I stuff them, because you want the hat to be as tightly packed as possible, so that anything that pushes on it from outside cannot buckle it. And you have to get it into all of your nooks and crannies in your hat in order to
I
do
also
that.
use for hats, people who collect baseball caps, they actually have these plastic caps that you can set for display, and you can stick it in there, and they have different sizes.
Yeah. Any other like cool secret fan? What is this?
So there.
Oh my god! Oh my god! That's so
You
cool.
can fit a whole big mannequin head in there and a hat and a wig and like, yeah, wow. I just wanted to do something.
You're so
useful.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get one for the Grand Arbiter so he can pack his hats
It's
and.
considered a personal item and not a carry
Ew.
because it could fit under the seat.
Hot. All right. Well, that was very exciting. Thank you. I love the like learning from the audience.
I'm gonna shout out to Chibi for that because thank you for teaching me.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
This was for Beth. Have you ever cosplayed Olivia
No, but I hope somebody does someday. For those of you who are like, who is Olivia? She's the main character in my current book series.
Aw.
So, yeah. That would literally, I would cry if somebody ever cosplayed one of my characters. Hint, hint, next year.
Yes. Thank you, Beth. So I have no idea where we're at on time.
It is 6:46.
All right, so we've got like 5-ish, 10-ish minutes left for questions and conversation. Yes.
When it comes to actually creating patterns for dresses or outfits or jackets or whatever, other than just plain old muslin and cannibalizing just whatever fabric you can get your hands on, is there anything that you would suggest when it comes to templating out patterns? Because otherwise, I just kind of eyeball the shape. But then you kind of put something on the fabric that out. Let's just say it looks like it's not.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I use Patternese. So Patternese is in between pattern paper and muslin. It has the flexibility of like muslin, but it's a little bit more like it's a little bit more terrible, I guess is the best way to put it. Plus you can draw all over it and erase it and it comes right off. It's super easy. And you can sew on it, but you just know if you sew on it, you're going to have to tear away fabric basically. But I've found it, I think I could know it as Patternese. I don't know if it has a different name.
Swedish tracing paper.
Okay.
Yeah. So I use that a lot too. You can't use it with highly tailored things because
Yeah.
it's not
You
up.
can get close.
You
but-
can get close, but like if you're making a corset, for instance, don't do that. Don't
do a
use
mock-up,
it. You have to do a mock-up, but you can use it to get a sense. I am a big fan of if I have to make a pattern and I am not using existing patterns and adjusting the fit for myself. A dress form is really good. You can make a duct tape double for yourself. It's very tedious and very time consuming.
surgical scissors, please.
Oh, 100% get surgical scissors. Do not mess around with that. Absolutely. Get a really good friend that you trust because you're going to have somebody cut you out of the dress form with the surgical scissors.
And you might be naked at the end if they mess up.
Yes. Or accidentally get stabbed. So like use those surgical scissors. Yeah. So I like that a lot, but I turn to Kenneth King, who is a sewing instructor out there in the world, and he has great tips on creating what's called like a moulage or like your basic block that is like your basic body shape as a pattern. And then you can use that sort of like a basic pattern for bread or something. It's your master, and you can just like pattern everything off of that. And that's really helpful. But it takes a little finesse to get there, but that's a tool you can work
that's
towards.
how I learned that I'm actually closer to men's measurements than women.
Yeah,
So I use men's patterns and modify them.
that's cool. Yeah.
If you don't want to do the duct tape dress form, because I've tried that and personally I haven't had good luck with it. I know people who have. I've just never gotten it to work. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or what, but
They're fussy.
bootstrap dress forms.
yeah.
Gives patterns where you can take your own measurements and then send them to bootstrap forms. Like there's a form submission, and they will generate a pattern for a custom dress form for you based off of your measurements. And they have, I believe they have male presenting bodies patterns and then female presenting patterns as well. Don't quote me on that. I know they at least have like female presenting. And so that's another option. There's also a lot of good YouTube videos out there as far, especially if you already have your basic pattern block. They show you how to manipulate that and how to modify it as far as drafting your own pattern. That's actually how I got the pattern for the bodice for my Captain Marvel gown. I drafted that from scratch because I couldn't find a pattern that I liked that did what I wanted it to do. And it took a couple tries to get the pattern right. And especially, I didn't realize at first that they did not take into account height. And so like the breast curve was an inch or two below where I needed it to be. And I didn't realize that at first. It fit kind of interesting at first until I figured that adjustment out.
And they do have custom forms for both presenting. Yeah.
Perfect.
And plus size.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
I am terrible at drafting my own patterns. I think the most pieces I used from separate patterns once for a single costume was like 5 different patterns. And I took like a bodice from this one and sleeves from this one and underskirt from this one, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of it comes with experience and learning how to alter patterns. So I can't create my own, but I can sure alter an existing pattern. And yeah, a lot of it is about learning your measurements and learning your sizing and what you need in a pattern. And I think a lot of that is just comes with trial and error. I use a lot of, what'd you call it? Swedish tracing paper?
Yeah. Swedish tracing paper.
It's amazing.
I just call it tracing material, but I think it's probably the same thing we're talking about. I love that stuff because you can actually like do a basting stitch with it and try it on and fit and, you know, kind of make little adjustments and make it so much easier.
That stuff is like thebomb.com. It's really good. And like, I am with you, Beth. I mostly use existing patterns and I alter them to fit me rather than doing a lot of flat pattern drafting because I don't like the math and I want the payoff. I want to like make that sexy costume. But the thing I was thinking about and wanted to like really reiterate is one of the most key things to do before you get started with anything else is to take fresh measurements. Like, it does not matter how long it's been since I made a costume. I measure myself again. Most of the time, 90% of the time. Occasionally, I don't. And then I find out my costume is too big and I have to alter the whole thing a week before the event. And it's very awkward. So I recommend, like, one of the first steps is take my measurements before I start adjusting the patterns and putting all of that together.
I was there for that costume. We were both so confused about why it didn't fit you correctly until we figured out what was going on.
I've literally never had a costume be too big in my breasts before. And I was like, I could put a whole like family of gerbils in this costume. That is not the goal. It's very gappy. So any other questions before we wrap up today? Okay, listen, we are going to be doing cosplay programming all weekend. We're bringing back more costuming at TUSCon this year and starting to get more cosplay programming off the ground. I hope you will come to all of those and cheer on our wonderful costuming cosplay author, cosplay guests. They're really wonderful. We also have a fashion show tomorrow at 7. Please come and cheer on our guests. Or, I don't know, come and be in it.
Or even come to the Iron Tailor and build something and then be in the fashion show.
Iron Tailor is tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon. And you don't need to be able to do anything more than hold a stapler.
It's gonna be great.
It's going to be madness. We will help you put together a team on site, but you can also bring your own team with you. So I hope you will join us tomorrow. It's 2 hours of chaos, and it's a good time, and it's a good excuse to be in the fashion show. So I think that's it. Thank you to our wonderful guests, Sarah, Beth, Sam. It was so wonderful to be here with all of you today. We'll see you at Meet the Guest, which is happening next door. And then later this evening, I'll be talking about vampires. All right. Thank you guys. Oh, you like hold the button for a long time.